I'm going to say it right off the top. Like, they bring back one of the original survivors from the first movie, and you think, oh, she's going to be, like, obsessed with Leatherface. She's going to kill Leatherface. They're going to do this thing like they did with Laurie Strode and what's her name in the Halloween Kills movies. And then they kind of make fun of Halloween Kills because, no, spoiler alert, the survivor gets a chainsaw to the chest, and she doesn't kill Leatherface. And you're like, oh, it's kind of like they made a joke out of it. That's pretty cool.
It felt very much like the Simpsons Shining episode. Like, Willie comes to save the day and just dies.
He gets chainsawed. Oh, man. And I don't know how you guys feel about the cancel culture thing on the bus where he's like, you're canceled, bro. Chainsaw.
I thought the movie was good up until that point, though. I was like, oh, this has actually had me like kind of jumping a little bit. And there was some cool imagery where I was like, okay, that's fucked up, right? That's scary. And then all of a sudden they're on the bus and it's a completely different movie. Took a turn. I was like, okay, interesting.
What, it's like too much carnage? Like, what was it like? It just lost the like realism for you, or like,
and then it lost like kind of the spook factor and like the scariness once they started doing like the whole cancel culture scene on the bus. Like everyone's videotaping him, and then it goes into this like social media thing being brought into it, and then the carnage began.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm twisted because I thought that was really funny. I thought that was really funny when they were like making a joke about like everybody's canceled, and then like
it's not that it wasn't funny. I just was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize this is. And Dave, I probably just didn't pick up on like the hints.
But you know, in all fairness, like this is just perfect timing. But like South Park, literally this week, the newest episode was about a bunch of young hipster people from the city coming into a town and taking it over. So it was just weird. Day after, literally one day after another, I saw a very similar storyline. And in the South Park, they were mocking like everybody was going around like Pilates, Cortada. La Croix?
Yeah, so Dave's talking about the plot device now. What sets off Leatherface from his retirement is he's living in a house that was his orphanage. I don't know. It's clearly not.
There's plot
it's his relative. It's clearly not an aunt, a cousin, a mother, or a sister mother. It's not anybody related to him from his crazy family. And but she's like, I have the deed to my house, so this is not part of your land grab that you have here. Because some people come in and they're like gonna renovate this little town or whatever, and they've bought most of their properties there, and there's a dispute over whether or not the new owners have the deed to this lady's house. She's like, oh, no, I squared it away at the bank or whatever. Leatherface is upstairs in his bedroom just kind of, I don't know, sitting there meditating, just, philosophizing, being a little philosopher about the clouds. He comes down to the stairs to see what the hubbub is, and it's like, oh, man. They mess with his caretaker, and then he's like snapping wrists and stabbing deputies. Like he's gets back to work or whatever. After that back injury, he's tired of lifting teenagers up. Hurt his back and was laid up for 30 years on disability. But he's like, all right, I'm coming back into action. Listen, like I'm not like a diehard. I'm not a diehard Leatherface dude or like Texas Chainsaw. Like there's fans online that are just like, this is just like The Last Skywalker. Like, we gotta talk about this. God. This is not my Leatherface. Da-da-da. I'm like, they're going really hard. I'm like, to me, it's like, it's a fun movie, and it does everything that a Leatherface movie is supposed to do. So I don't see the hubbub.
You know what? I honestly, I love this movie. I couldn't believe, like, because I'd seen a lot of negative stuff online going into it.
Yeah.
And it's people who don't understand what they're getting into. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I've always joked that like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween are having a duke out to like best original movie versus awful sequel after sequel. This is one that like, yes, it's stupid, and yes, it has plot holes you can drive a truck through. But at the end of the day, I signed up for a movie that had a lot of gore and a lot of kills, and I got that. Yeah, it has some stupid elements to it. He's technically in his 70s or 80s if you do the math, and it's a direct sequel. But you know what? At the end of the day, like the gore factor, it was just, and it went down smooth. I mean, it was like less than 80 minutes. So I don't know, man. I don't get the hate on this movie.
It also has some surprises towards the end that I think people are going to like. One thing I always hated about the Texas Chainsaw Massacres was the cannibalism. I was never involved in enjoying the cannibalism aspects of the story. Like, they say it's based on a family of I was just saying don't piss on Texas earlier, but now like this thing is supposed to take place in Texas, and it's supposed to be based on like a family of crazy Texans that eat people. But there was a Scottish family that like attacked people on the highway and supposedly inbred. So that's like a story from Scotland. mixed. Like this whole thing seems like just totally made up or whatever.
Interesting.
But this movie's better than like the last 4 Chainsaw sequels. Like there was a remake, and there was a sequel to the remake, then there was another remake, and there's one other in between that might have been a reboot. I'm not sure.
There's been 4 since
young Leatherface
2003
deal,
or 5. Well, now 5 with this one.
Look, he's the infamous chainsaw killer. The only other chainsaw that's famous in horror movies is a good guy chainsaw. It's Ash from The Evil Dead, but he actually isn't necessarily a murderer. He kills monsters. We're definitely going on a tangent here, Jordan. Like we're knee deep in the muck right now in Chainsaw.
Well, because I've never seen any other sequels, and I think I've only seen the original, and then this would be the sequel that I've seen. And the original always scared just the shit out of me. So, and I loved that about it, but yeah.
No, it's very. I think you're doing fine there. A lot of people love number 2. I'm not one of those people. And then I think.
See, maybe I had only seen a remake. I'm just trying to figure out the one that I've seen. My favorite.
It goes into the city. It goes into like Dallas or Houston, and they stalk a radio host. And then there's a guy whose kids were killed in the first movie, and he's played by Dennis Hopper. And he's like gets his own chainsaw, and they go chainsaw to chainsaw. And I think it's awesome. Like part 2 is still my all-time favorite of all of them.
I might need to rewatch it. I think I did a marathon of these like 10 years ago, and
we'll squeeze it in somewhere, David. We'll squeeze it in.